Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us once again across the Louisiana plain, where we are advancing the cause of constitutional freedom and liberty, raising the profile of great constitutional conservative candidates across the state of Louisiana, and day by day, steadily, relentlessly, inexorably, and courageously draining the Louisiana swamp. My name is Chris.
And I'm Danielle, and this is the State of Freedom, brought to you by freedom-loving Louisiana First Patriots. Hello, State of Freedom warriors. Thank you so much for inviting us to be part of your day. We are so grateful for you. You are the best of the best, the cream of the crop, the best listening family anyone could possibly hope for. And you know that we're only here because of your encouragement, your prayers, your friendship, your financial support. And if you are looking for a way to support us, to advertise with us, or to send us feedback, please do that at freedomstate.us. We would also love it if you would help us get the word out about the State of Freedom and help spread the reach. Please like the show on whatever platform you listen to us, subscribe to it, and share it. You can share short clips instead of the whole interview or whole episode over on our YouTube and Rumble channels. And links to those, as you know, are always in the show notes and over on freedomstate.us. Moms for Liberty East Baton Rouge Parish Chapter is dedicated to fighting for the survival of America by unifying, educating, and empowering parents to defend and take back their parental rights at all levels of government. To learn more or to get involved with Moms for Liberty East Baton Rouge, email momsforlibertybatonrouge@gmail.com. That's moms, the number 4, Liberty Baton Rouge @gmail.com. The email address is on the Patriot page of our website, freedomstate.us, and it's in the show notes. We have a real treat in store for you today. Darin Gaub is a war hero whose retirement plans got completely upended because of the dire situation in our nation. Instead of going on to a second career and doing all of the things that he'd been dreaming about doing after his military career, he's working around the clock. He finds himself working around the clock now, trying to take our country back to foundational principles and return the governance of it back to we the people. We are so thrilled to have Darin with us today. Before we talk to Darin, let me read the scripture of the day. It's John chapter 2, verses 13 to 14, and it says, "When the time was close for the Jewish Passover to begin, Jesus walked to Jerusalem. As he went into the temple courtyard, he noticed it was filled with merchants selling oxen, lambs, and doves for exorbitant prices, while others were overcharging as they exchanged currency behind their counters. So Jesus found some cords and made them into a whip. Then he drove out every one of them and their animals from the courtyard of the temple, and he kicked over their tables, filled with money, scattering it everywhere. And he told the merchants, 'Get these things out of here. Don't you dare commercialize my Father's house.' That's when his disciples remembered the scripture, 'I am consumed with a fiery passion to keep your house pure.'" And I believe that we're entering into a time when those who have commercialized houses of worship will face severe consequences. Many, I believe, will be kicked out by their own congregations. The reverential fear of the Lord and a holy hunger for the true meat of the Word of God, true deeper teachings, is spreading, not only through churches, but across the unchurched population as well. We can see it. And people cannot and will not tolerate what's fake or what's set up to profit people in the house of God. I believe this is a time where we're not only going to see people demand righteousness and purity in government, which is what we talk about here a lot. But before we see that come to a head, we will see it first demanded in the churches. And I believe we're at the beginning of a holiness movement. And anyone who tries to stand in the way of that, and anyone who's in ministry for personal gain, will find themselves severely dealt with and ultimately on the losing side.
And everything that you've just said, Danielle, is just a reminder to me that we always have to check our motives, because we all have the capacity to become corrupted. You know, T.S. Eliot said that the last temptation and the greatest treason is to do the right thing for the wrong reason. And I believe that unfortunately, many people's motives have been corrupted. We have to always be evaluating our motives. and to make sure that what we're doing it for the right purpose and ultimately for the glory of God and for the preservation of freedom and liberty. I have no doubt that our guest today understands this principle and really has spent years at this point since his distinguished military career promoting principles of freedom and liberty. Lieutenant Darin Gaub, what a pleasure to have you here with us today. Before we get into the meat of what we're talking about, I want to let our listeners know from my perspective, simply because it moved me so much. And I know that you're far too humble to say it, so I'm going to say it at this point. 4 Afghanistan tours, 3 Bronze Stars. You flew the Black Hawk, commanded a Black Hawk company commander for Black Hawk Brigade, and on and on. There are a few who really have a more distinguished military pedigree than you. We could spend the entire show talking about your military background, but I just wanted to let our listeners know a little bit about where you come from. You were also involved in intelligence, military intelligence, while you were serving in Afghanistan. So welcome to our show. What a blessing to have you, sir.
It's a pleasure to join you both. Thanks for having me on, and greetings from west central Montana, here in the foot of the Rocky Mountains, enjoying a little bit of summer heat and some very dry air as we like it up here. It's a little different than Louisiana.
A lot different from Louisiana.
Yes. Every time I cut the grass, Darin, I'm out there thinking, my gosh, is it 140 out here today? Because we have the heat and we have this just oppressive humidity. So I felt like there were times when I felt like I was going to pass out, but I muscled through and got it done. And Danielle helped me to recover my electrolytes after it was over with. But literally, there were times when I thought, Lord, am I gonna die out here? We got it done. So anyway, tell us a little bit about your organization, Restore Liberty. I know you're an advocacy organization devoted to really state sovereignty and individual freedom, but tell us a little bit about it and what you're up to now.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity to share that first. That's my primary focus really Restore Liberty is not only our title, it's our mission. I know that the implication there is that something that must be restored means that something must have been lost as well in the past, and clearly it has. We've become so used to government being far too big, far too intrusive, that we often forget, that our nation started with throwing tea in the ocean after a small tax was placed upon it, and here we are 250 years later or so, watching it happen much bigger than that. So what we do specifically, though, on the advocacy side is we work with sheriffs. We think that's extremely important to know which sheriffs are on our side, on the side of the people, on the law, and which have been corrupted and are not. But we never stop at winning or losing an election. We consider that when people come together with a trusted human network, we can accomplish any mission. So we'll endorse candidates at any level of office if they meet our very strict criteria. And we have this weird assumption that says, and I say weird tongue in cheek, of course,
everything good is weird now.
Exactly. We start with this assumption that our society could suffer some form of collapse. And if for no other reason than $36 trillion in debt. One of the leading indicators of a nation that's getting ready to go through some hard times is a debt load that they cannot eliminate. And so we say things like, if that happens, then what normally happens is that somebody will attempt to usurp or gain power over the people in the turmoil that is in the nation when it suffers this kind of collapse. And we want to be able to say that can't happen here, and that if we're going to restore liberty, restore our government to what it's supposed to be, let's use the Declaration, the Constitution that we already have to do it. We don't need to start over. Now, that roadmap is there. Just because it's been largely ignored and misused or misunderstood for so many decades now, working against the people, doesn't mean that those principles properly applied can't rebuild this nation. Now, this is not stuff that we want to have happen, that we want to see happen, because that basically means we become northern Venezuela in how we look. And we don't want to see that. We want to fight in the systems that we have now to reform them in a way that can also be done, but it's no small task. So I just got tired, along with my co-founder and many others, of seeing organizations get compromised for so many things. And this goes to your verse again, the church. I mean, there's Christ's church globally, which we are all members of if we follow him. And then there's places like Joel Osteen's prosperity gospel that are not biblically sound at all. And those are the things that lead people to understand that, well, one of the first things that gets compromised is the church, and it's because of money. Like all things, root of all evil, right? So start at home by cleaning up our home places first, and then we go from there. And because the church truly needs to lead the example, it needs to lead this nation back to God, and needs to be the first ones to look at themselves critically too and say, what are we doing wrong?
Yeah, that's a great question. It says, reminded me of the scripture, young man, get the plank out of your eye, then you will see clearly to get the splinter out of your brother's eye. So it definitely starts in our own backyard. It starts within our own hearts. You mentioned societal collapse, Darin, and you have an interesting position and one that I think has great merit, that all of the incompetence that we're seeing in our government, all of these colossal failures from the Afghanistan withdrawal to so many other things that we see in our society are just studies in ineptitude and incompetence. But you take it a step farther, and your argument is that these failures are deliberate. These failures are purposeful. They are not mere negligent incompetence. Talk about your notion of deliberate incompetence and what is the ultimate goal of the people who are deliberately designing things to fail.
Yeah, clearly you've read my Substack.
Yeah.
We're always prepared.
And before you answer that question, another question came to mind, Darin, that maybe will feed into this. So in thinking about this concept of restoring liberty, as you were talking, this is something that's kind of been percolating in my spirit for a while now. But are the American people so comfortable that can the American people handle the kind of liberty that we were ultimately founded for?
Well, yeah, thanks for the easy one.
You can take the easy one first, Darin.
Yeah. Well, they do kind of tie in, I guess, in a way. So I have a saying that says that people don't move until they're uncomfortable, and a lot of people have high pain tolerance. And so they're often stuck in the reality they've painted for themselves, and we're all susceptible to that. That's why we have to step out of our comfort zone and talk to other people and be social and get educated about things and realize that different perspectives can have value. Sometimes the only value of a different perspective is to be able to see just how crazy it is. But same thing, just like free speech. I like it when the crazy people have free speech too, because then they can come out and say whatever they want. And hopefully they're saying the truth. And then you can see them for what they are. So yeah, are we ready for that kind of liberty? I think a segment of society is, and certainly would be able to handle it. And the funny thing is, it's actually, kids that are my age, my kids' age, I should say, 28, 26. I'm going back to trying to be perpetually young here, I guess. But
you are.
Yeah. The mid-20s or so, I've worked with a lot of them around the country, and it's amazing just how conservative they are, because they're seeing that this American dream of home ownership and various other things are becoming fleeting and almost disappearing because of what's going on. And I think that's a generation that is fairly ready for it. There are plenty of people who could care less or don't realize that they're just pawns on the chessboard. At best, sometimes they're not even the paint on the squares. But what I'm fearful of and concerned about is that we're going to have a people who don't see what's coming until it's so late that you can't stop it.
Yeah. And, you were talking about a high pain tolerance, and I think people don't really have a high pain tolerance at all, but they are so medicated and so numbed and so distracted that they don't notice the pain. And I think that's the train that's coming at us, right? The pain has been here to tell us what's coming. And people have done everything in their power to make it so they don't feel the pain, the little pain, so that when the big pain comes, they're going to be completely blindsided. That's my fear.
And that gets into that failure is the plan, which is that title of that Substack, which bottom line of all that is we're ascribing incompetence to something that is deliberate, in my opinion. And look at someone like Joe Biden. He gets into office through miracles of its own. You could say I've been working election integrity for a while, so with that, how he got there was fairly obvious to those of us who work in that arena. But he is there, and they knew he'd be incompetent. They knew he'd be terrible at this because he's never really done anything. To be a senator for 50 years from a small state in the Northeast is, that's not exactly what I would describe to be accomplishment. That's called existence. And
he was able to lock up a bunch of Black Americans for marijuana use. So I guess that's an accomplishment.
Well, yeah, we wouldn't want to expose the truth about anybody here. But ultimately, though, it just comes down to the fact that I'm sure the system, whether you call it the globalist cabal, you call it the deep state, and these are all people who are just group thinkers, they implanted someone like a Biden in the White House because he could do a lot of damage very quickly, and he had no real prospects in the future for the political arena. Clearly, we've seen that now as they combine together to eliminate him as fast as they possibly could from contention and potentially losing this next election. But what did he do? Well, let's see. He accelerated and brought in the DEI hires, the woke military, the border invasion, continuous reduction of the petrodollar value, Kabul, Middle East, Ukraine, potentially Pacific. And you can make this list that could go on for pages that is just failure after failure after failure. And whether it's military, diplomacy, information warfare, economics, all these different kinds of things, every single bit of that he's failed at. But I think that's the plan, is to say, you know what? All right, you failed enough. The damage is done. It doesn't matter whether you lose or win in court now. Because even if you were to win in the court on the conservative side concerning illegal alien immigrations and whatever else you want to call that, to me, it's just a straight up invasion. What does winning in court do now that you've already got 10 million people running across the country who are not from here? What are you going to do with a corrupted system of governance? And you can find multiple examples around the country where that failure led to a consequence that you can't unwind. There's no other way to explain it other than that is what was wanted. And now it's here.
Yeah. And now it's here. Do you feel like it's not your position that it is irreversible? Obviously, we do have many millions of illegal aliens in our country now, most of whom, or many of whom, I'm sure the Democratic operatives are going to try to somehow register a vote for them in the fall elections. Do you feel like there's still hope, though? It's not irreversible for our country at this point. Certainly, we still are in this fight, but there's hope for the country.
There's always hope. There's always hope. And, as you dig into that Substack, if people are curious and want to see what's there, I wrote another article in there called Expect the Evil that this very simply says that everything you see around you it's actually more the default nature of the world than the other, in a fallen world spiritually. So why is there always hope? Because there's always God. And the people who are willing to obey and work on his behalf, on behalf of truth, on behalf of righteousness, on behalf of those things that matter. So if we do that, that's what we simply ascribe that as, using the terms of our founding fathers. It says, let's just do our sacred duty and let God handle the results. Because no national leader or nation will rise or fall without God knowing it and without God allowing it. That doesn't mean that we do not do our work. That's kind of like throwing seeds into a field and sitting back and watching it and saying, okay, God, you got it. He goes, no, you might want to water that. You might want to tend to very part.
Exactly.
So we have.
And as so many people have been reminding us in recent years, all it takes is a righteous remnant. God isn't expecting the entirety of the population of the United States to even repent, even admit that there's something wrong, even try and fix anything. It's up to us. It's up to this small remnant who sees what's going on, who hears the voice of the Lord, who's willing to turn and do the work that he's called us to do, just as you've done. You've departed from any hope of of a normal retirement life, no golf in your future or whatever.
That's probably good. That's probably
Yeah.
Well, there's a great term there that we use all the time in our organization. It's called the remnant, because we're constantly asked, how many members do you have? I said, I have no idea. I don't really care. I want the people in this organization who God wants here. And that's enough for me and ours. And we don't need to be, I guess, the majority. If you find yourself these days in the majority, then you're probably on the wrong side. So I will take a slim minority with God rather than a majority without him any day of the week. So our hope comes from that. The truth of the matter is that there's an infinite, perfect God who can unwind things to his will, however he chooses to. I'm just going to do my very best to be obedient in that and be truthful in the things that I say. And if we lose, okay, well, let's think about what's next, because elections cannot be where everything stops and starts. That's just one tool. But ultimately, this country was built by people, for people, not by government, for government, and for politicians, some of which are good.
And ultimately, Darin, it's between you and God, and me and God, and Danielle and God. And God is not going to ask us when we see him and meet him, how many wins did you have? How many failures did you have? He's going to ask us whether or not you were faithful to him and whether or not you did your duty, as John Quincy Adams said, as you quoted just a minute ago. I want to ask you about the Trump assassination briefly. I'm sure that you followed it. You probably have read a lot about it. Would you consider attempted assassination on President Trump? Would you consider that to be an example of this notion of deliberate fail? Was there an effort to take him out on the part of our own government on the inside?
I can form no other conclusion than that, based on the level of failure, the type of failure, and the information that's continuing to come out. I'm willing to certainly be wrong and just have it be chalked up somehow to gross ineptitude. But given how many events the Secret Service does every year, what their standards are, and I've worked at the White House, I've worked with the Secret Service and many other agencies, I know what their standards are. And this failed on so many fronts. And the information that's coming on now about who was the shooter, how many shooters were there, what was the different ranges of various types of rifles and the rounds used, and all of this, I think, is going to continue to grow to the point where people who think it's just ineptitude are just kind of stuck there, are going to stay there. But those who constantly dig and look for truth are going to find that just like places like, Benghazi and other things, the truth is much deeper and more sinister than what is placed in front of you. So this seems like it was a plan A failure. I think the removal of Joe Biden was a plan B, with subsequent emplacement of Kamala Harris, who never got voted on in a primary election anywhere across this country. So how can she even be on a ballot anywhere legally? I don't think she can. So, going back to the whole northern Venezuela piece, how many years might it take us to get to the point where we act like the Venezuelans are right now and take back our country?
I'm excited to share a fantastic opportunity for State of Freedom listeners who are interested in investing in precious metals or even starting a home-based business in the precious metals industry. Metal Stacks is a precious metals collectors club where you can buy your metals at the best prices on the market, actual dealer cost. They are beating the big sites. They have no credit card fees and no minimums. If you're just interested in purchasing metals at a great price, visit metalstacks.com/dwalker. Get to shopping. That helps me out. I get the commission. You can also refer people to Metal Stacks for an additional income. If you're interested in learning about the referral business aspect of Metal Stacks, email me directly at Danielle@freedomstate.us for more information. Do you think that the Venezuela example, I just can't help but think that Venezuela is a little bit of a template, but also kind of a narrative setup for the American people, where, of course, nobody really believes that Maduro's some good guy, right? But to know that these Biden admin, these Obama admin holdovers who couldn't make a right decision if it hit them in the face are championing Gonzalez all of a sudden, it's really concerning to me that they're on the side of the people, honestly, because I kind of take what they say and you need to do the opposite. You need to think the opposite of what these people are saying. So the fact that they're on the side of the people, and they set Trump up in so many ways as this, they paint the picture that he's this kind of dictatorial figure, which we know he was not in his 4 years in office, a dictatorial figure, an authoritarian figure whatsoever. Are they trying to maybe draw, this is kind of my fear, are they trying to draw a parallel between Maduro and Trump and this Gonzalez figure and the deep state, and trying to say that, hey, overthrowing the election or being unhappy with the results of an election are okay if the wrong person wins, even though it's not true, right? Of course, we know the results of their election are not what Maduro's saying. I don't know if what I'm saying is making any sense, but I just have this sense that we can't trust what Anthony Blinken is telling us. And so what are we supposed to draw as a conclusion from that?
Well, no, it makes sense what you're saying, and the key thing that you just said was you can't trust Blinken and anything he says, and by default, of course, Obama, Biden, Harris, or any of these people. But I think the philosophy should be that none of us should ever be surprised to find out when you have a Manchurian candidate on your hands. For one, that if the deep state people are championing somebody, that means that they could be. Gonzalez could be okay to go into office and then suddenly completely change his stripes. That's possible. But the real narrative of it, I think the American people should see from Venezuela is you can go from being a prosperous, well-to-do nation and become destitute very quickly. And that happens in months in the right circumstances. And it's been 27 years since then. So it takes a long time to crawl out of that morass and have to restore liberty to a nation. So the narrative we really need out of Venezuela is we need to fight with everything we've got now to prevent our nation from going down that road in the first place. Because do we have 30 years to come out of it? I don't think so.
No, that's not the way I want to spend the next 30 years.
No. Nope. I'm sure we've got other priorities that should be taken care of. I mean, I guess
you would definitely rather play golf, even if you hate golf.
Or learn golf. Yeah, it doesn't matter. I'll do anything other than that. But it's just not a life that any of us should wish for anybody, regardless, because I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to realize just too late. And that's one of the goals, really, of Restore Liberty, too, is with our County Guardian program that says, there's going to be people who do realize too late what's going on, but they're going to look for leadership. And if they look for it in the wrong place, it's only going to make things worse. So we're going to place that leadership around the country as best we can with the funds and resources that we have available to us. That way, when those people do wake up, they can look to somebody that is, at least worthy of being in leadership and willing to do what it takes to bring this nation around, but can also display the same grace that is also biblical. And grab those people and say, okay, here's what you've learned. Here's where we need to go now. That's the past. Let's move forward.
And Darin, as you're thinking, I mean, this is something that Chris and I have experienced. The awakening process is a bumpy one for people. And kind of the first emotional response people tend to have when they're waking up to what's really going on is a feeling of helplessness. And they're looking for someone. So I'm so thankful that you're placing these leaders and picking up these leaders across the country who can be kind of that beacon of hope for people. What is it that you're telling people to do? Because I think, we have to help move them from helplessness to action. And they want action. And I think people that's one of the pieces of feedback our organization has gotten consistently is that people really appreciate the fact that we give them calls to action. We help them know what steps to take to affect the kind of change they want to see. What are you encouraging people to do, and how are you directing them to take some action steps?
Excellent question. Yeah, because there's complaining and there's doing, and
Yeah.
And we've seen a lot, and we've seen both. Believe me.
oh yeah, probably a lot more complaining than doing, but
100%.
consistent with everybody else. But first thing we tell people is that if all you're doing is focusing on Congress and DC and the presidential race, you're probably missing most of the battle. That's a huge fight for sure. There's no doubt about it. But if that's not your passion, if that's not where you're called to serve, then don't worry about it. That's okay. Because we consider that the DC and the federal government really is the bottom of the pyramid of the power structure. The power structure of the United States goes from individual down towards federal. That's how it's supposed to be. So we have a thing on our website called the Practical Tacticals that helps answer some of these questions. So if someone comes on board, and this is where our model is completely different than most. Most nonprofits, they have like a singular focused organization that only does this, and they seek funding and various other resources based on that narrow focus. And that can be good if that's how they want to operate and other people believe in that. Ours is different because when someone wants to come on board with us as a county guardian, we talk to them and say, listen, your problem in the county you live in Louisiana is going to be different than the county where I live in Montana. That doesn't mean there isn't some similar tactics in how they run commission meetings or how they run taxes or various things. That's for sure. It seems like there's a lot of the same there. But when you come on board with us, we're going to say, you know what, find your passion. And if your passion's a school board, if your passion's a city commission, if it's tax policy, if it's property rights, if it's environmental, whatever that may be, find out what the greatest problems are in your county and then address those, or within your city, and then address those. But be part of this national network of people that is building, because we want to fight that now, but we also want to be able to go to that long vision strategy that we've got about what happens if we have a national collapse, and keep our mind on that and not forget about it. But if a person, I'll use Mississippi for an example. They did a phenomenal job of researching the entire state of Mississippi and figuring out how much of the land and commodities in Mississippi was owned directly or through proxies by Chinese entities. And that was a big deal in Mississippi. And the number is scary. Turned that into a 30-page report, submitted it to Congress, and that is why this discussion now about China buying land around America's military bases and sensitive locations and other things has become a national thing, is because of the research we did in Restore Liberty starting in one small county in Mississippi.
And Darin, I just want to tell you, there was a bill here down in Louisiana that our organization fought really hard on to prohibit enemy governments from acquiring immovable property anywhere in the interior of our state, which was passed and signed by the governor. But it is really alarming when you think about the extent to which China and other foreign entities are, in fact, trying to dismantle our infrastructure. And one of the ways that they're trying to do it is through the acquiring of immovable property in various states throughout the country. I love what you said about talking about doing things more on the local level and on the state level, and not constantly being focused on the federal behemoth that we're dealing with. The 9th and 10th Amendments give the states, as you know very well, plenary authority to regulate their own affairs and to govern the welfare of their own citizens. And I very much appreciate the fact that your organization emphasizes the 9th and 10th Amendments, emphasizes the extent to which states can assert their own sovereignty and protect their own citizens in the face of this federal tyranny and federal overreach that we're seeing. And in the view of many people, that is really where the fight is, on the state level, because we've come to a point now, even if Trump wins, which, God, I certainly hope he does, and I think it will make a massive difference, the fight still is on the state level. And the local level to protect our own citizens. And it seems to me that in researching your organization, that is a principal focus of it.
Oh, absolutely. And Reagan said it best when he said that government that governs least and governs closest governs best. Not word for word there, but the point's the same. That's the way it has to be here. I mean, it's the primary institution in the United States. The primary governing body is mom and dad over their kids. who seek to prepare them to be successful in life and then to push them when needed. All those parenting skills. That's the primary institution. Then you work your way down to the federal government. So we have to instill in our governors, and you have a phenomenal one, courage, and say, hey, listen, remember, why would you seek as a governor really to pursue the presidency as a promotion? I would consider a move from governorship to presidency as a demotion, and less consequential. That's how it's supposed to be. And our governors really are some of the most important, along with our attorneys general, secretaries of state. I mean, these statewide agencies who can band together and just tell the government, no thanks. I believe it was Thomas Jefferson who said it. I mean, if I remember right, that thank you, Supreme Court, for your opinion. Now where's your army?
Yes.
Our country is not run by courts. The Supreme Court is only supreme over the courts. It's not supreme over the people. We've got to fight within the world of judges and various things like that too, and education there. But first and foremost is to recognize that the judicial is the weakest of the three branches of government by intention. It's the way it was designed, and that's what we would probably call basic civics has completely been misunderstood and mistaught, where they say things like, three co-equal branches of government. Well, no, there are three branches of government, but they're not equal. The legislature is supposed to be the dominant of the three, with the executive and the judicial following. So we have to, through all of these different educational mechanisms, through the different agencies, and through our with our organization, it's just saying all of this is of value. Do it as of the most value to you and to your county. And if you do that, and then be willing to be part of a team doing that across the country, you can fight in the here and now, the systems that you have, the problems that you have, in hopes of reforming all of these things from the bottom up, I guess you could say, because no house is going to stand very well with a bad foundation, right? House on sand, house on stone. So as a home renovator, I like to use those kind of analogies a lot, because I've got a house here that's got a foundation that was built in 1880, made of granite. It's 2.5 feet thick. It's survived earthquakes up here routinely. You didn't have a strong foundation, then the rest of it doesn't really matter what you do.
That's right. Darin, speaking of groups working together to achieve common goals, our organization, LACAG, has been in existence down here for 2.5 years or so. And one of the things that we've discovered is something that you've mentioned, which is that it's very difficult to get conservative Christian organizations to coalesce often and to work together in harmony to achieve noble objectives. It's been somewhat frustrating. It seems as though there's just this resistance to complement one another's efforts and to help each other move the ball forward. Why do you think it is that it is so difficult sometimes to get conservative Christian organizations to cooperate and work together? Ostensibly, we're trying to achieve the same objectives, which is to preserve liberty and freedom. And yet that does not seem to be the operating principle all too often. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think there's an element of pride in some respects. That could be the negative element. And it's like, hey, no, I started this organization 6 days ago, and we're going to be the preeminent organization doing whatever X, Y, or Z. I'm like, well, good luck. I've been doing the exact same thing for 5 years. Why don't you just join us? No, I want to do it on my own. Okay. And you wish them luck. They're like, but don't ask me to help you because I've been doing this for so long, trying to do this. Ultimately, what you end up with is a whole bunch of constitutional cats running in every direction in the open field. My goal is to at least try to do the best we can to get all those cats running in the same direction, because you're never going to get them all in one place. We're wired for independence. And that's just the way we operate as people. And that's just the way we operate as organizations. So what we did as Restore Liberty was say, you know what? Not everybody's going to want to join us. Not everybody needs to join us directly. But we do need to be able to work alongside of and promote and advance the cause of organizations that we align with. So when you see Restore Liberty, you can look at our Friends of Restore Liberty page, and you'll see people like STARS, Stand Together Against Radicalism and Racism in the Services. Matt Lohmeyer, who used to command the Space Force and expose Marxism and the teachings there. He's involved with them. We've met and we've talked. We help each other advance each other's causes. Because ultimately, you got to ask a person, what is their goal? And if their goal is liberty and freedom and reconstituted in the United States of America, then if you align philosophically, why do you care how you get there? We don't bring on.
That's such a great point. Such a great point, Darin. And it's sort of similar to what Reagan said. As long as we are achieving a good objective, who cares who gets credit for it? We're working together and we're doing what needs to be done to preserve freedom for the next generation. Who cares about the credit? And that's really the way we've sort of looked at it. And I was just curious to know why you think it is that it's sometimes difficult to get these various organizations on board with each other. And I think you're right. I think a lot of it does come down to pride.
There's also funding.
And funding, yeah, exactly.
We're a 501c3, a C4. We're building an LLC. We've got a super PAC. I mean, it's, we want to play in kind of all different kinds of rice bowls. And funding is hard. But we refuse to go down the path where we're going to attack and minimize others in order to elevate ourselves, in order to gain that funding, because we're not doing this, to make a living. We're doing this to make a life for the future. And people who support us, great. Thank you very much. We use that. I've made $60,000 in funding last over 3 years. You can do it if it's disciplined and you're all volunteers. But if you come on with us and say, and the first question you ask us is, how much do you get paid? Same as the rest of us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And I think to your point as well, getting people on the same page is not that easy. But if you think about it, the disparate groups, whenever it really comes down to it, getting their name out or being at the top of the marquee or the top of the success seems to be the goal, instead of what the goal should be, which is, having free and fair elections or ensuring protection for the unborn or whatever it is. We tend to see that. We tend to see that people are really more concerned with their name and their recognition than they are with the goal, which is a real shame.
Well, yeah, and I saw that, frankly, to use a small example, was the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. I wrote a piece on that as well, just because I wanted to assess. I'd never been to one, so I went and I wanted, as a delegate, and wanted to assess it for myself and see what it could be all about or what it was really all about. And one of the key conclusions in the article I wrote called "The Elephant in the Room" is the grassroots doesn't have much role there, and it's really about the establishment, the donor class, and these kinds of things having a giant pep rally. And the fact of the matter is that the real heroes of this nation tend to be the people who are not on the podiums, who are not in front of the cameras up there. They're in the trenches with the shovel, getting dirty and making the difference. And I'm not afraid of a camera and using the skills and talents that God has given me too. But if all you're doing is trying to advance your name recognition or your funding streams and various stuff like that, you're not willing to get down there and risk things and get dirty, then I don't think you're really in this for the right reasons either.
Yeah, we've seen, and that's one thing that Danielle and I have been very, very passionate about, both with regard to the State of Freedom and Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, is achieving measurable, significant results. I can't tell you the number of organizations that we're familiar with, not all certainly, because there are some great ones, but there are a number of organizations that seem to limit their political activity to meetings, having cocktails with politicians, and really not getting down and dirty as you're talking about, and not accomplishing the things that really need to be accomplished. And we've just been determined that we are not going to be part of that. We're going to be, we want to be known as an organization that works very, very hard, shows courage, and achieves measurable results. And I think that's the kind of track record we've built. And certainly, I think that's the kind of track record that Restore Liberty is building all over the country. Can I ask you? Oh, go ahead, Danielle. And then I got to ask him something else unrelated.
Sure. I was just going to add to your point on the RNC that I couldn't agree with you more. The most inspiring speeches to me throughout the RNC were the people that they pulled up on stage who were not accustomed to a stage, who were super passionate about something, or, I was just so struck by the average citizens that they pulled up on stage that were maybe leading a grassroots effort, or maybe, like, I think there was definitely a mother to a fallen law enforcement officer at the hands of illegal immigrants who had been released again into society. Those people, their voices and what they said mattered a lot more to me than, politician number 7.
Yeah, no, I get you. It's I think they should have changed the title from Everyday Americans to Heroic Americans. Because as far as I'm concerned, there's no such thing as an average American.
Absolutely. No question about it. Do you think that people, the average American citizen, has become disillusioned with political parties generally? I've noticed that with regard to your endorsement policy, Restore Liberty's endorsement policy, you really do not focus on the party. It's on the principle, on the positions, on the issues. Do you feel that many Americans have become disillusioned with the party apparatus, Democrat, Republican, and the current structure of things?
I think many have, and I think they're given plenty of reason to do so. I mean, it's even in Montana, they're like, "Oh, you're a red state." Not really. Not when you know the things that we know up here about the people and who are in our political offices. And we would say that statewide elected offices, you've got one patriot out of 6. Most of the rest of them are not. And you start looking at our congressmen and our senators, and when it comes down to it, Matt Rosendale was our congressman, is the only one who would be considered a true fighter, true patriot, and understands his job. The rest of them, they fake fight in public in order to raise money, and then they go back and vote the exact same. So that's why people are disillusioned by parties, is because they can't tell the difference most often. And so what our goal has always been is, if we don't want a neck and neck race with 2 horses trying to get across the finish line where you can't differentiate R versus D because they're trying to blend into each other. We want to have like entire body lengths of difference and be able to identify and endorse those people who make it very obvious that there's a difference, not only in your words, but in your deeds. That's why we don't have a lot of endorsements, because those people are few and far between.
They are. And, I'd love to see both party apparatuses completely blown up, and people have to run on their own platform, because I think the platform has become a shield for people, and the R and the D have become a nice little badge that lets them not have a perspective or anything that they have to stand behind. They can just say, they just point to the letter, and that's what they say they are, and they vote however the political winds blow, or however the donor winds blow. And I'm just so fed up with it all. I'm ready to see people stand on their own 2 feet, say what they stand for, say what they mean, and have to defend that without any support from a party. Maybe, the fundraising support from the party, all of it needs to just go away as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, we built this organization for that eventuality, because people still need a place to land to organize.
Yeah.
And be able to collaborate, communicate, talk, and do things that are important. And we say, you know what? Do you live in accordance with constitutional principles and fight for that no matter what? Yes? Well, call yourself whatever you want, but that's what we're looking for. Because if you erase those bottom 2 legs on an R, you end up with a D. So
yeah. Do you, Darin, another thing that we've discovered here is that not only is there a massive divide between what many of these politicians say when they're running for office and what they actually do once they're elected to office. There's a massive divide there. And I've always believed that if in our own state, if Louisiana citizens knew exactly what these quote unquote Republican legislators, many of them, certainly not all, because we've gotten some very good ones in there, but what a number of them were actually doing while they were serving in office, they probably couldn't be reelected here in Louisiana. But they conceal it so effectively. And one of the things that we're doing is we're bringing to public light the massive difference between what some of these Republicans do and what they say. And that is so important because many citizens, quite frankly, don't know. If the citizens of Montana, you said that maybe 1 out of 5 or 6 of your national representatives from Montana are true constitutional conservatives, truly represent the interests of the citizens of Montana. Do the citizens of Montana know that?
No, sadly, not enough. They use the same tactics here as they do anywhere else. I mean, you've got John Tester, a senator, who 5 years of his Senate life, he votes radical, 100% like Joe Biden and all the rest of them. And then for 1 year before re-election, he suddenly tries to turn into this picture of the moderate hero. And all it takes to do something like that is to be unashamedly lying about everything that you've done. And then, if you attack John Tester, then the Democrats come back in and say, well, you're just a big fan of Republican Steve Daines. It's like, yeah, no, we hold him to the same standard, and he's failed this state of Montana as well, and here's the reasons why and how. And then as soon as you do that, they're just like, oh, that ammunition is gone. Because you've taken it from a R versus D battle to a, no, here's the principles. You either measure up to them or you don't. And none of us are perfect. But if we start from that goal of saying, I'm going to do everything I can and risk everything I can in order to uphold those principles no matter what, then at least you're starting from the right place, rather than I got to vote whichever way lobbyist X in DC says. Otherwise, I'm not going to get the donation of however many dollars from my reelection campaign. And then it all turns into about you and not the people, not the principles, not the way this nation is supposed to be governed.
Yeah, it's not the way it's supposed to be governed. But in reality, the average ordinary American citizen, the average ordinary Louisiana citizen, collectively is much stronger than any lobbyist, is much stronger than any donor. And that's where the power of Republican government comes from. And that's why waking people up, making people aware of what's really going on is so very important. And that's exactly what your organization is doing across the country. And you're filling such a vital niche in the country. And we just want to encourage you as you continue to grow. You've already made a very significant difference, and no doubt going forward, you will continue to.
Yeah. Darin, where can we send people to learn more about your organization? And tell us your Substack as well, because it's a really fantastic read.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much for your kind words. And yes, I'm happy to stand alongside you as an ally and do everything we can, along with Hollis, as you know. So you know what kind of state directors we're looking for. But
yeah,
to find
out, Darin, got to give a shout out to Hollis. By the way, I don't know if you know this or not. I don't know if he's keeping this a secret, but we call him Bubby.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I figured you knew that. So shout out to Hollis, the Bubby, a.k.a. Bubster Day, a very dear friend of ours, great friend of our shows, and we wouldn't be talking to you but for Bubby Day. So God bless Bubby.
Yeah, amen. Yeah, he's exactly the kind of people we're looking for. But yeah, you can find us on restore-liberty.org and just kind of peruse our site there a little bit and check out our County Guardian page and get to know that a little bit. And you'll see a little bit about how we look at things around the country. Yeah, personal Substack. If you just look up my name, Substack and Darin Gaub, it's the good thing about having a weird name like mine is that it's probably the only one. So,
and we'll have it all in the show notes for sure.
Keep up the good work. Thank you for having us. And whenever you get down here to Louisiana, please reach out.
Oh, absolutely will do. Such a pleasure to join you guys today. Thank you.
God bless you.
Great to see you, Darin. Thank you. Thanks for listening to The State of Freedom. To stay on top of all the calls to action or find resources we mentioned today, check out the show notes for the episode. The scripture reading and reflection for today's episode are on our website, freedomstate.us. If you'd like to support the show financially, you can do that on our website as well. Again, that's freedomstate.us. If you'd prefer to give by mail, you can send a check to the State of Freedom at P.O. Box 861, Berg, Louisiana 70343. If you own a business and would like to support our show by advertising, please email us at info@freedomstate.us. To get involved with Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, visit LACAG.org, LACAG.org, or email Chris at chris@lacag.org. If you're enjoying the show, please subscribe and share it and give us a 5-star rating in the reviews. Thanks again, everybody. We'll see you next time.